Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Shed Organics Show. And today we are chatting with a lovely gentleman, the Aussie art maker himself, Craig, who is an absolute wizard at macro photography. Now, macro photography, if you haven't heard of it before, sounds macro, sounds big, but it's actually all about the micro. It's all about our tiny, tiny life forms that we see around us. The bees, the spiders, all of the insects that are in our garden that we may not even take a second look at a lot of the time. We may not even notice that they are there. They might be so well disguised, as Craig goes into. But today, I wanted to showcase somebody who is exceptionally good at this macro photography, in one man's personal humble opinion, but also the opinion of many others that he shares his artwork or photography with. So please, yeah, go and research macro photography and have a little look at Craig's Flickr, which I'll link underneath for you as well in the show notes. But please go and check it out, have a little look, and I'm sure you're going to get inspired and interested in the fascinating world of macro photography. So, without further ado, here is Craig, the Aussie art maker.
Years ago, I wanted to be a graphic designer, and I got a camera in my hand, and that was it. It started out just doing a lot of technical stuff inside my house, but then I started to get outside and go after look at insects and stuff like that, and it just grew into some kind of an obsession. It's
That's
at the
cool.
technical side of it, and also learning about things as I go along. So yeah.
Yeah. So, is that like when you say you started in your house, like, were you talking insects, like things that you would find coming into the house, or is it something different?
No, I was doing a lot of making water droplets collide with each other,
Wow.
and refractions in water droplets and stuff like that. That some people consider really technical, but it was a lot of fun. But when I started working with insects and spiders and stuff like that, it was really good. And it's a good escape as well to get out and express yourself in that way too. So
I totally agree. And
yeah,
then, yeah, well, any kind of, to me, as a fairly new person into the world of, you call it macro photography, don't you? Yeah.
yes,
So
yes.
in that world and me coming across it, something along, well, any of those technical shots, well, any of those shots, I should say, sound technical because when I'm trying to zoom in on a bee or something or whatever it might be with my probably pretty bog standard camera, I find it very difficult to get any kind of decent shot. Now, obviously, we might talk about gear and things later as to try and get those particular shots that you have. But in terms of like starting with water droplets and things like this, did you start with a specific camera and setup that you were trying to achieve for these water droplets and things like that, and then just go from there?
It started very basic. I don't have a great deal of money, and it was just a crop sensor camera, and I modified. I got a reversing ring, it's called, and reversed the lens. So I was using it backwards,
Oh,
and they call that the poor man's method of macro. And it started that way. It took me a long time to get an actual macro lens. When I got the macro lens, that's when I started to get into water droplet collisions and stuff like that. So
yeah, cool.
yeah.
And that sounds like it's more like I imagine you see these really slow motion videos as well, where it's sort of a very high frame rate and you can see the water droplet exploding. Are you firing off like a shutter sort of like burst photo to try and capture this, or is this a video that you're then slowing to a still?
It's called high speed photography. That's the genre that it falls into. It's freezing motion with flash. So flash becomes
Wow.
the shutter speed of what's going on, and what you capture happens faster than you can blink. It's a
Wow.
fraction of a second. So that's with the water droplet stuff.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
what,
amazing.
so I took that into my macro with insects and stuff like that. Using a lower flash power is beneficial when using flash, sharper photos.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. Because
Yeah.
certainly, I highly encourage all of the listeners here to go and check out your links. You've got some amazing prints behind you and some shots on the screen. I'll make sure I link all of the galleries that you have available for people to go and check it out because when I saw, I think it was actually, to be honest, that trio behind you on the green stem, that one up on the wall. I think that's the
Yeah.
first photo I saw of yours, and
I
it's it's properly impressive. It brings what I think it brings to me is this feeling that I have been shrunk down to that scale, and it feels like I'm encountering these creatures in what I would call like a real life tangible scale. So
yeah,
when I'm like looking at a bug in the garden, my eye isn't good enough to see the detail that you're able to produce with these photos. And it brings this quality of this lifelike quality to the insect or the animal that
yeah.
you just simply don't get with your eye. Um, how did you find diving into this world with insects? Because obviously I'm coming from a gardening sort of background and primarily my audience is gardening focused. So they'll see a lot of these insects maybe in the garden and around. So what started your fascination with actually trying to capture the insects and why insects and if possible any different insects that are your favorites to capture and why that might be?
Actually, spiders are probably my most favorite, and maybe because they don't have wings, they can't fly away. I don't know, but no, but just the diversity, I think, in spiders
Yeah.
and how much difference there is in them. But um, I'm not 100% certain why I love it so much, but it's just something that I'm so drawn to and I enjoy a great deal. That I do it every day. So
Yeah.
there's not many days go by where I don't have the camera out doing something. So
That's cool. It's like creating every day, isn't it, really? And being able to
yeah,
express yourself, as you mentioned earlier, every day.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
are these all sorry to cut you off. Are these all at
No,
home and all around your place, or are you traveling for this, or?
I have hardly ever traveled to do it. I have a couple of times, but most of it is around the majority of what you will see on my Flickr account is urban Wodonga, where I live. So
Cool.
around the parklands around where I live. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well, there is an amazing diversity, as you say, in our
yes, yeah,
backyard. Like,
yes,
I feel as if you could probably take, if you have a fairly diverse and thriving um, ecosystem at home, then you'd be photographer, like taking photos of everything, like for a long time. So there'd be plenty of different species. And as you say with the spiders, I want to touch on the spiders in particular because they look crazy when they're blown
yeah,
up to that sort of scale. Um,
yeah.
are you with these particular spiders? I'm not a huge fan of spiders in terms of just being a little bit scared of some of them. But so if I
Yeah,
see a spider, I'm generally one to take a step back. You might be taking a step sort of forwards and closer to
definitely.
see what's going on. Um, are you are you aware now of all of these different species from having to jump in? Are you sort of learning as you go and trying to figure out what's what and that kind of thing?
Heaps to learn all the time, but it's great. I've learned over the last 12 months a lot, but I've still got a lot to learn. It's you go into the groups where people identify spiders, and you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah,
but
well,
but
fair.
in general, I know more than probably the average person. But yeah, but I
Yeah.
still really enjoy learning, and I'll take a photo of one that I've never seen before, and I'm hanging out to find out what it is, so that the next time I see it, I know what it is, and yeah,
Yeah. That's a good way of doing it, I suppose. You kind of when you come across it, you can capture it obviously very well, and then you're putting these
mm,
photos into to help have
Yeah,
identification from others, and they'll kind of give you a little bit of a backstory about it and what role it plays in the garden and things like this.
yeah,
Do
yeah.
you do any sort of vegetable gardening or anything yourself, Craig?
When I first moved into the house that I'm in now, a little unit, there was barely any garden at all. It would rain in the winter time, and it would turn to mud.
Yeah,
So I ended up turning in a heap of lime and got a little lawn going, and I've got some passion fruits and some chickens,
awesome.
and I've got some flowers and stuff going out the front. So yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah, because I imagine having an interest in insects, you might have an interest in trying to bring them in
yes,
to where you
yes.
are. So is that something you're actively trying to do? Is encourage them?
Yes, I always plant sunflowers and different pollinator attracting flowers into the garden so I can sit and watch the blue-banded bees and stuff like that come and go.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No, I love that.
uh,
So the yeah, in terms of like monitoring your garden and watching. So I'm curious for a lot of this style of photography or even just this interest in insects. I spoke to another lovely lady who is also very keen on the insects in the garden, and she finds it very therapeutic, but also very interesting to watch the little jobs and roles that all of these insects play in the
mm.
ecosystem. What, tell me about a little bit about your experience in that, in watching your garden and like, and learning and seeing some of the roles that some of these insects play. Is there anything that stands out or anything that you kind of have, what's your experience in learning that kind of thing? Because yeah, it's
I,
important to watch.
I can tell you something funny that I watched
Please.
last year. I had some basil that had bolted,
Yeah.
and there was a crab spider, milky flower crab spider there, and he just caught a European honeybee, an invasive
Yeah.
European honeybee, and then along came a European wasp and stole the honeybee from the native crab spider. I thought, yeah, no.
That's amazing. And is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
whilst
yeah.
you were capturing that?
Yeah, I had off camera flash set up trying to take photos and stuff, but that happened so fast I didn't have
Wow.
photos of that. But
Yeah, that's really
yeah,
that's so interesting because as you say, it's like just watching those little things, you kind of realize that they all have their own personalities, they all have their own communities, and how they interact with each
mm,
other is somewhat like what we do in our own communities and the world here. So
true,
yeah, it's a really cool thing to learn from your garden and watching those types of things. Um, let's, if you can, let's just touch on more of the aspect of taking the photo. So,
sure,
say for example, as you say, you're doing this every day. So, going out into the garden, are you setting out to go, all right, I'm going to set up the camera on this particular area and then sort of wait and see? Or are we finding something and then quickly rushing to set things up and capture that? Or talk to me about the process of you going out to capture
sure.
some photography. Like, what's your thinking?
Majority of what I'll do with my photography in the season where everything's booming in spring is early morning before the sun's well, like right as the sun's coming up because insects, spiders, they're exothermic, so they need heat to warm up. So in especially native bees and stuff like that, they're very sleepy in the morning. So that's the best time to get out and have a look around, see what you can find. You know, have a little head torch on, and walk around with your camera, and providing you're still very careful with a native bee, you can get away with shaking the branch a little bit or whatever to take the
Yeah.
photo that you yeah. So
Wow.
that's usually the way I do it. But the other one is nighttime. A lot of spiders only come out at night, so I'll go out looking for spiders at nighttime as well. So
Yeah, cool. Because
yeah,
I know personally just from like most of the flowers that need pollinating from some of our vegetables and things like this, like zucchinis or cucumbers at the moment. We're getting that pollination in the morning or first thing in the morning because that's when the flowers are opening. to receive that pollination. So I imagine, like you say, you're
Yeah,
trying to jump in with the bees and the pollinators and things early morning when they're a bit sleepy or they're just starting to go
yeah,
out on their rounds. And vice versa, trying to capture the spiders that come out at night because the dawn and dusk time to me seems to be the most active for all of these
yes,
insects. So
yeah.
you're sort of out heading out at those times. And are you, like I said before, are you heading out with your setup and kind of just like looking around and going, "Oh, that might be interesting," and then take the setup over and take a photo, or are you kind of like, is it a put it on a tripod and sort of get all the focus right and all of this kind of thing? Like what's the process in actually taking the photo?
So my approach is with flash photography,
Yeah.
and that's where
Wow. Whoa, that's awesome.
um, that's my
Yeah, love it. It's all
my
branded and
setup.
yeah,
Oh
cool.
yeah, that's I make this
Yeah, actually,
diffuser.
I was going to touch on that, so we'll do that
Yeah,
now. Tell me about it. What is it? It's you invented this, is that right?
I invented this panel. No one had ever made one in this material before, and it was a crazy idea that actually ended up being amazing.
Yeah.
It's extremely efficient. So it doesn't demand a lot from your flash, which means you can use lower flash power, which is a shorter duration of light. So you get sharper photos as a result. So,
Wow. So is it
and
is it diffusing the light? Is that the
that
idea?
yeah, so like if you think about a bright sunshiny day, you try and take a photo of your subject with that bright sunshine shining down on it. It's a tiny little light source, and you're going to get a lot of specular highlights, and it's not going to look pleasing. If you do the same thing when it's a cloudy day and you take photos of yourself, it's going to look much nicer. And
Yeah.
that's so if you're ever taking photos, always try and shade your subject or soften the light with some baking paper or a
Yeah.
scrim. You can buy scrims or these things. That's what this is designed to do. It's designed to make that tiny little light source inside that flash a big
Yeah.
light source.
Right.
So
Nice and wide and sort of evenly distributed
very
around the
nice,
lens.
yeah,
Yeah.
nice even
That's
light,
brilliant.
so with your harder light, with your small light source, you get hard shadows. So those shadows that you see will have a line. They'll have a definite defining line on the shadow. Where if you've used a soft light, you can barely even see the shadow. It's a really soft, smooth graduation of shadow. So
Right.
more pleasing to us. So
Yeah, so that's
that's
more
yeah.
pleasing, right? So it are there times when you probably would want to use a hard light to
Yes.
emphasize something? Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah, there are some people will take photos of snowflakes and use a hard light
Wow.
source to reveal the colors and stuff in the
Yeah.
snowflakes. So, yeah.
Okay. That's that's really cool. And that setup that you have looks very portable and very easy to set up. So is it as simple as almost pointing and shooting because you've got everything set up in the back end with all of your settings are all sort of dialed in for this type of thing?
Yes, I shoot very simple. I'll either use in-camera bracketing or manual focus stacking. Depending on that, it will be an electronic shutter or a mechanical. But I have a very simple approach where I lock in my flash power, my shutter speed as to whether I'm using mechanical or electronic, and I control the intensity of my flash with the aperture.
Wow.
So if it's a really dark scene, I'll need to open up to let more of that flash onto the subject. If it's really white, I just close down, and it's a very simple approach, and that will vary a little bit with magnification as well. But it's all handheld. I rarely need a tripod. I've always
Yeah.
got this mic. I'm either resting the camera on the ground on something, or I'm holding it with my hand physically stabilized, like sort of like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And because I, as you say, with like sort of magnification and things like this, I imagine because it happens very fast, you're capturing, as you mentioned before, like very efficiently a frame quicker than we can blink. So
Yes.
if if you're, say you haven't eaten yet and you've got a little bit of sugar shakes or something, your hand's not quite steady. What like is that impacting the shot? Like how still do you have to be, or is it that fast that it sort of mitigates some of that shake or
I,
like handheld stabilizing?
a lot of a lot of people think that focus stacking or focus bracketing is really difficult. I actually don't. I shake a bit, you know. The main thing with focus stacking is keep A to B. So if your subject's here, you're moving from here to here or there to there. Um, you don't want to vary that. You want to go
Yes.
that way or that way. You don't want to change in between, and you want to try and keep um, don't move. It's
Yeah, I
that's
know
the
what you.
most important axis, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah.
from
That
start
makes
to
a lot of
finish.
sense. So
The
you've got to
software,
stay along the same one. And that's like because this is so technical and there are so many aspects, I'm kind of coming at it from a very general, this is very new to me.
yeah,
Um so because like taking those photos and having that stand still, you're talking about this process of focus stacking. Is that
yeah,
when you say focus stacking, how could
yeah.
you most simply describe what that might be to someone who's not heard that term before?
Okay, I'll answer your first question properly first.
Sorry,
Sorry,
no, all good.
the flash will freeze all motion.
Okay.
If as long as you're overpowering ambient light, flash is going to freeze the majority of your motion. Unless you're trying to take a photo of a bullet, then you might
Yeah.
need an air gap flash. But
Okay.
flash will but with focus stacking, it's basically because you're so close to a subject, your depth of field's like sometimes less than the thickness of paper, that the
Uh,
amount that's in focus. So what people do is they gather a whole heap of photos of that subject at different focal points. So what they're doing is that they're just
ah,
changing where that focus point is, and they'll do that by moving either the subject or the camera, or with these later cameras, they will do it internally for
wow.
you as long as you hold the camera still. And then there's software that you can use that will find all those sharp parts and compile an image with all the whole lot and
Right.
together.
That makes so much sense.
So
Thank you. Because that then allows, like in some of the photos that I've seen, a very clear focal point from the back of the insect to the front or side to side and wrapped around some of these, all of these amazing eyes and wings they have. Because yeah, when you're that's something that I was trying to bring to
yeah,
words is you see the focal point of the subject usually, and the rest of them might be a little bit blurry as it sort of fades away into the background. But then with your photos, you're able to capture the detail at the focal point, which obviously looks all the way through this. So that's called focus stacking.
yes, and that's what I do majority of the time. But there's nothing wrong with taking single images either. I just enjoy the challenge of focus
Yeah,
stacking.
yeah. But do
Yeah,
you think it gets a better result in the end, being a much clearer, focused thing, or is it just depends on the art, depends on the viewer and all of this?
yeah. Art in itself is a subjective thing, and to me, I love focus stacking. I like the challenge of doing it. But that's not to say I haven't taken a lot of photos that are single shots that are really nice too.
Yeah,
Like my water drops, you can't focus stack water drops. They've got to be.
of
You get
course.
one shot at that. So,
Yeah, no,
but
so true.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
well, say for example, I wanted to get into macro photography, all right?
yeah,
Give me the most basic and cost-effective way of starting. So for example, this is where my thoughts going. Could you get a iPhone clip-on lens that magnifies your subject or whatever it is? Um, or are you oh, that's another question. I've got so many interesting things I want to
yeah.
ask you,
That's all
Craig.
right.
So yeah, if that's, can I do a clip-on iPhone lens? Obviously, you're not going to get the same detail. The more you go into your gear and the more money you spend, obviously the generally the quality gets better and better. And so is it possible to start that way by grabbing some sort of little lens and things like this? Because the previous girl that I mentioned, she gave us one from Amazon, that was, I'm not sure if it's a macro photography lens, but it was a clip-on one that works really well for getting a bit of
Yeah.
magnification. Um, have you seen people start that way, or is it better to kind of grab a DSLR or something like this and go into that world?
lots of people they'll get an old film lens and they'll modify it for their
Cool.
yeah, and they call that funnily the name of that they call over in overseas in the Philippines and they call it lens bong. If you Google that, it's a good thing to remember because if you Google it, you can find people that have
Awesome.
converted this for their camera, or you can actually find websites over in the Philippines and that where you can buy different things that they make and some of the results they're getting are phenomenal results. But it's a tiny little sensor in your phone. But if you're just doing it for yourself, or you want to be a part of something on iNaturalist and you want to document, and that's an amazing way to go. It fits in your pocket. It's perfect
Yeah.
for, and if you don't have a lot of money, it's perfect to do that. So
Well, that's kind
it's
of what I'm thinking is like when we generally when we all start out with something, some new endeavor, we're not going to be diving in and getting the most expensive setup and the pro setup, although some people can and whatever.
mm,
But I like to try and dip my toe in and try something. And I feel like if there is some easily accessible ways of doing that
yeah,
and getting interested in the small micro life that we find in our gardens, if there's some small, easy, cheap way of doing that, then I think that makes it a lot
yeah,
more appealing to more people.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, cool. So brilliant. The other question that I had that was going off before, I was saying that about, I was thinking about magnification. So you mentioned magnification. It looks like, and as I was saying, that they're the same size that I am, and when I'm looking at these photos. So
yeah.
are you seeing the subject through the lens at that magnification? So
Yes,
it's being done from your camera. There's no
yes, yeah.
post magnification going on.
Sometimes you can crop in, and sometimes we will crop in post production
Yeah,
for
just a little. Yeah, you can just take the edges off or something like. Yeah.
yeah. I always like to put a four to four to five or four to I can't remember the ratio, but I like to print. As you can see, that doesn't take up the whole paper up there.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that ratio,
Yeah,
but
because it's got a little bit of blank space or whatever they call it. Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah. No, some it's all I can see. The magnification live in the EVF as I'm looking
And
at my
what?
my subjects.
Just out of interest, what? How many times is it being magnified most of the time? Like, what's your go-to?
My little setup will go from 1 to 1, which is life size on the image sensor. That's what they call true macro. It'll go through to 2 to 1, so 2 times life size on the image sensor. Or I can add that. It's a
Yes.
two times teleconverter,
Wow.
which will double that,
Wow.
so that I could go all the way to 4 times life size.
And what does that
Sometimes.
do for me as the viewer looking at the photo? What 1 to 1 versus say that 4 to 1? What's the difference that I'm seeing?
Just recently, made a focus bracket of the genitals of a spider.
Right.
So, right, not the spider, but just the
Yeah.
male reproductive organ of a huntsman spider. So, you see a lot where they've done a portrait, or you can see the eyes and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I've been able to just take photos of that part of the spider.
That's
So,
incredibly small.
or even just their foot, like
Yeah,
their.
I've seen one of like just a foot and that's incredible. Like just
Mm,
and the way sometimes the ones where you do it in the dark and you can it's just like pretty much pitch black around it and you've got this just this leg that looks so alien and so like, it's got all these crazy fur coming off it and it's
yeah,
such a, it's incredible really to be able to see some of these things. Um
yeah,
so yeah, so you're going 4 to 1. So that's when you say 1 to 1, I
yep.
think what I'm looking at 1 to 1, but it's not, is it? It's like 1 to 1 of you say that's true macro like size. What do you? I'm just trying to wrap my head around what that means 1 to 1 because 1 to 1 I
So
would say is like oh there's a ladybug it's this big that's 1 to 1. 4 to 1 means it's probably 4 times bigger than it is in real life, but so is that as the photo? So if I put the photo up on the screen 1 to 1, the I'm going to hold a ladybug up and it's going to be identical to what it looks like. Is that kind of what it is, or
if you
am I a
think
bit
of
wrong?
a if you think of a full frame camera, it's got a 35 millimeter sort of sensor. right, then you get a one-to-one lens, a lens that says that it's capable of reproducing that an image at one-to-one scale, then you can set that lens to one-to-one, make a photo of your ladybug. That ladybug is going to be one-to-one on that sensor. So it's going to be life size
Hmm.
in that frame.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And then if you go four times, you're looking at four times greater than life size on
Wow.
that 35 millimeter.
And then are you usually doing um yeah, are you usually doing like what sorry, what am I trying to
You're
say?
right.
Are you trying to do a 2 to 3 times magnification to try and get those smaller parts is or 4 times? Is that what you're trying to aim to do? So if you're capturing the entire insect, it's usually around 1 to 1 for that macro, and then you're going into like 3 to 4 if you want to really get in on something that's kind of a finer detail on the insect.
A lot of really interesting stuff is beyond 2 to 1, or
Yeah.
around 2 to 1 magnification. A lot of things that because like if you think about a ladybug, you can tell what that is from a distance, or them nasty little potato ladybug things
Yes.
like
Yes.
that got stuck into my cucumbers last year.
Yeah.
But things that you don't usually see, that's where a lot of really interesting stuff is. So I like to photograph that because I don't see what it really is until I'm really magnified close up to it. So
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. And
It's
and
good to
what
show. It's good to show that with people. Share it. Share that detail and
Well, that's
discover it.
yeah, that's exactly it. Is there something that you found that really fascinates you that or like something you enjoy taking photos of in that kind of realm that's a little out of the ordinary?
There's some spiders in my area that I've found over the last year. There's one it's a member of the orb-weaver family. It's called an acroaspis, and it's the funniest looking thing. I found the first one I found, it was a really cold morning and it was on a leaf. I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I went in for a closer look. I'm like, hey, no, that's a spider. And I disturbed it, and this thing's got this massive big turret on top of it. And it started to try and walk off, and it actually fell over because this big tall thing was crazy. But there's another one called a poultice as well. They mimic twigs. So during the day they'll become part of the stick. You wouldn't
Whoa.
even hardly know they were there. They just look like part of the stick hanging off. And then at night time they'll hunt. It's really, really cool. But yeah, so far I found the acroaspis here and the poultice. And we also have a wraparound spider as well. They're pretty cool. They wrap around the stick.
Wow.
And some of them have little turrets on them as well, little stick up bits.
What's the turret for? Is it like a sensor or something like that or
I presume, and an arachnologist would know more than me, but I presume it's just for twig mimicry,
Oh yeah.
just to protect themselves in the day, because that's when they're trying to hide, hunting at night. So
Yeah.
there's actually the other interesting one I found earlier this year is a bird poo mimic spider. In the
Really?
daytime, it looks like a bit of poo,
Wow.
and at night time, it releases a pheromone that attracts in a male moth, thinking that it's a female. And then she says, or the spider says, "Thank you,
Thanks very
I'm
much.
hungry." So
That's insane.
they're pretty cool too. And it's those kinds of things what you learn along the way that keep you interested, I think.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's exactly what I love about it. And I I can imagine that, yes, you get to share these images, which is really cool. But like the day to day of just seeing how things work and just kind of, like it's almost like watching a little bit of a reality show of insects and kind of
Mm,
understanding what their world is like because
yeah.
I had no idea that a spider mimicked bird poo. That's like
It's pretty cool.
it's so genius, really.
Mm.
Just to be able to kind of use what is around to trick, your prey or whatever it is. It's very clever and evolution is pretty insane. Um, yes, okay. Let's talk a little bit about. I've got a one question here that I had that I've been keen to ask you about. Um, it's more in terms of like sort of the joy in and the inspiration behind like sharing the creativity. So this for you is obviously very creative. It's very as you say, it's art. And that's something that you have brought into your name as Aussie art maker and the things that you're
Yeah.
you're pushing out there. I love that. Um, how is it? How have you find? How have you found it as a way of art? Like, what's your thoughts on using it as art and what's your goals, I guess, moving forward with that? What are you hoping to try and achieve in the art sort of space?
Uh, a lot of our species are just declining really rapidly. Like in Western Australia, there's a peacock spider losing habitat. They're not sure if it's known anywhere else, and they're going to build a heap of houses there. So it's important to document what we have for future conservation of things. So I feel that I can contribute with my art in a positive way that make nice photos, but they're there for documentation too. So that's what I feel I'm
That's
doing
great.
with my.
So
That's what,
if
yeah.
do people like you mentioned before, there's like forums and things for identification, and
Mm.
was it iNaturalist that you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier? Talk to me
iNaturalist
about
is a good
a bit
one.
about that. Is there places where people are actively monitoring these things that you can then contribute to?
iNaturalist is good. You can download the app and use your phone, take a photo and upload it. You get ID and it goes on a map. There's a pin on the map and it lets all sorts of people know what's around and entomologists and arachnologists. And I think it'll be a really positive thing for the conservation of all
Yeah,
sorts of
that's really good.
everything because we need everything. It's like what you say about spiders. They are so much as important in our ecosystem as the bees are. Everything has a place. So
You're right.
yeah.
And I was talking about grasshoppers with somebody the other day and how they've got grasshoppers everywhere. And they said, I just wish grasshoppers wouldn't be in my garden. And I said, well, we need a couple, we need
Yeah,
some. They're not completely like there's no complete pest unless it's maybe like something that's kind of been introduced and it's not native and things like this. That's when you sort of see things get thrown out of balance. But
mm,
um yeah, we need a bit of everything. And like talking about that with native species and things like this, are you noticing, because you said you've done this for a little while now, are
yes.
you noticing either more natives, less natives? Are you encouraging more natives? Is that something we should be aiming to do and look out for, or
I think the Euro wasp is a problem, definitely. Um, that's about the only thing if I see a queen or whatever in the winter time when I'm out, yeah, no, she's gone.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, because they are very very devastating on our native bees and everything. They're very opportunistic and they'll eat anything. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, oh, I've lost my train of thought.
No,
Anyway,
that's all
forget
good.
about
That's all good. Yeah, that's
whatever.
perfect. Well, that's kind of what I was hoping to get at is like, is there some things that aren't as beneficial because we do want the
Yeah,
diversity, we do want a bit of everything, and everything has its role, it plays its
yeah.
part. So if there is something that people are seeing, like some species that are coming in from, well, they've obviously been here a while now, but the European wasp and things
Oh,
like
they're
this,
bad.
yeah, they can be quite devastating. I know that, say, for example, like the Queensland fruit fly is devastating up here, but now it's found in New South Wales, so maybe it's not as much the Queensland fruit fly. It's now just an Australian fruit fly, and these things
Okay.
kind of change and adapt. But um, I don't know whether you've managed to capture any of the devastation that they cause on fruits and vegetables, but but
I
they're
probably could.
yeah.
I haven't you thought about that as a subject, but I probably could.
Yeah, yeah, or just because they're so, widely spoken about and
Mm,
I guess shining a macro light on these
yeah,
insects can help people better understand them. But I like your approach with trying to use your art and as a documentation and
yep.
trying to, yeah, share that with more people to kind of help them understand what's going on in the garden, what's around, and this kind of thing. So Yeah, I think that's really, really important. How can we, as gardeners, like, how can we integrate like photography, or how do you think a gardener could use photography to help them? My first thought is that you can document certain things at certain times of year. So, for
Yeah.
example, you see, like you said, you had the ladybug that destroyed your caterpillar, I mean, your cucumbers. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that
So
was bad.
yeah, exactly. So you kind of go, I should document this, write this down in the diary. Here's a photo of what it looks like. Um, have you ever thought of, actually, this just came to my mind. Have you ever thought of creating a book or something that is like a bit of an identification? Like here's the photo of the insect and here's a little bit about it, where you might find it, what it's
Yeah.
good and bad for, and that kind of thing. Is that something that you've ever thought of?
I thought about doing a book on macro photography
Cool.
a few times before, but that's a good thing about iNaturalist. If you don't mind, people can use your images in papers and stuff like that.
Ah,
It's a really cool community. Good thing to be
I'll yeah,
involved in.
I'll make sure I link that because I
Yeah,
want everyone to be able to go and check that out because that's something, yeah, I think
yeah,
everyone can just get involved in and start taking some photos. Um, in terms of your invention on your camera,
yeah.
is that available for purchase? Can people find that and buy that?
Yeah, I do want to. I got to do some branding, I think.
Yeah, I think so. You got to
But
put a
a decent logo and some packaging. But this part I've been developing for quite a while, and I'm pretty very happy with it. And
yeah.
people that have it in their hands are also very happy with it. So
Well, that's what I was going to say is that it seems to be awesome. So, if someone wants to get in and get involved with something like that, is there somewhere they can go to try and find this
they
gear
can
or get it from you?
they can contact me. I do need to get a website, I think, and yeah,
That's okay.
not very good.
Where can they contact you? Where's
On
best at the moment?
Facebook for now, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cool. Yeah, yep.
Uh,
Sweet. And then you've got your is it called Flickr?
Flickr, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. So
and
that's your gallery of awesome shots that I've had a look at. So, and
yeah,
like some of them are so amazing. I would
thank
love to
you.
actually pinch a couple for my wallpapers on my computer or something. And
Thank you.
but yeah, they're honestly, it's really incredible. And like to just to have something that you don't normally see
Yeah,
on that scale, brought to, as I would call, brought to life in a lifelike scale, is just it's really the wonder of this world. People talk about dinosaurs and aliens and things like this. Like we've got some pretty weird looking things on our planet at the
mm,
moment already, and like
I'm one of them.
I
Sorry,
love
joking.
no, that's hilarious. That's awesome. But yeah,
Uh,
it's just really, really cool to be able to see like the diversity of creatures that we have on this planet and how they kind of
yeah,
how they work and how they get brought to life and that kind of thing. So um yeah, so really quickly, is there anything else at the end that you want to share? Is there something that you think we've missed? Because we've covered, how to get into it, some sort of basic setup stuff, your process of capturing and going out there and actually taking the photos. And then obviously you've got this program that stitches stuff together and helps you on the back end. We don't really need to go into too much detail on that. I'm sure if someone's really interested, they'll be able to reach out and ask you a
yeah.
question or two. Um, but yeah, is there anything that we've missed that you want to jump in and bring to the table before we wrap up?
Not sure. I hope I went all right. I hope it's been good value for you.
Oh,
It's
absolutely, mate.
very, very nervous.
No, it's
It's
okay. That's these conversations are just important to have. It seems like
yeah,
it's difficult because you're thinking about the audience. Like I'm trying to bring value to the audience as
yeah,
much as I can, but at the same time, like for somebody like myself who isn't involved in what you do, it's so fascinating and so interesting. So any kind of insights and
yeah,
your day to day is a lot. is very valuable.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget how interesting what we're doing day to day is, and you sort of get lost in the process of doing it all the time, and you might not think it's special, or you might not think you
Yeah.
have much to bring to the table. But um, honestly, I think what you're doing is really wonderful, and I hope people go and
Thank you.
check out what you're doing and what you're all about, and hopefully you've inspired a few more people to take some wicked photos. You certainly have inspired
Yeah.
me to keep an eye on the micro life and start to have a
Yeah.
little look around. So, yeah, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate
You're
your time.
welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah,
What was I going to say? One thing I want to say is I think, like a lot of people will start gardening and then and realize how therapeutic that is.
they
Photography
do.
is the same. So
Yeah,
I sort of, yeah, it's like both of them, you got double then.
yeah. So you got two in one. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
that's right. So what do you mean by the therapeutic side of it? Just being like basically coming into you're focusing on what's in front of you. Nothing else in the world is really mattering at that time. You're kind of zeroed in on the subject and
It's a headspace thing. Like I've got a little hedge thing out the front that was pretty out of control when I moved in, and I got it looking like this bowl thing. And I like getting out there. I'll get out there with the cutters, and I've got my little bowl, and
yeah,
I'll get the music going, and I'll cut that thing into the bowl, and I stand back
yeah.
and look at it.
It's
And
it's
my
art.
flowers, yeah, my flowers too. Like it's really rewarding to stick a bit of worm castings on there and watch them take off,
Yeah.
and watch the bees come in and stuff like that. So, and that's a good thing, I think. And
I think
just
it
to
is.
help you get away from life and what's going on, just
Yeah.
focus on that. So,
And there we have it, guys. Thank you very much again to Craig. This guy is living a fascinating life down there with those micro creatures. And as he was saying, there's so much technicality to some of the photography that goes into it, and it's very much a learning curve. Um, I'm pretty new to photography. I have a very good photographer in my family, my brother, and even just from hearing from both Craig and my brother as to the different technical aspects of photography, it can be a huge challenge to try and get the exact shot that you're after in that instance. We're fortunate that technology is coming along quite fast, and we're able to use some of these fabulous new gear to create photos and videos that are something that years ago would only be dreamed of capturing. And now it's even more accessible with little micro lenses and things like this, or I suppose it's called a macro lens that you put on your phone and things like this to get stuck into the world of photography. So I hope this inspires you. I hope that you can find a way of getting into the garden and having a look at some of the smaller life that we may miss and trying to appreciate it, as I said again, go check out Craig's links. Go have a look at some of his photos. Maybe you can chat to him if you're interested in getting one of his special sort of flash diffusing hood things that he's got for his camera. Um, Otherwise, please leave a review. Let us know if you enjoyed the episode. If you've got any comments or anything, leave them down below. And we'll see you again very soon on the next episode. Thanks for watching.